Welcome to the Ultimate Farm Wife podcast. On this channel, we're going to be discussing all things marrying a farmer, moving to the land, and becoming integrated with a family farming operation. Whether you're moving to the farm for the first time or whether you're moving back into a family farming operation, we discuss the ins and the outs of all of it. So let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to today's episode. Before we begin, I'd like to provide a trigger warning. In this episode, we discuss miscarriage and the loss of babies. We understand that these topics can be sensitive and may evoke strong emotions. If you or someone you know may be affected by these discussions, we encourage you to take care while listening. Please feel free to skip this episode if it is not the right time for you to be listening to these discussions in the current moment. Our intention is to handle these discussions with sensitivity and respect. If you need support or resources on this, please contact your GP, counselling service, Lifeline, or Beyond Blue. You can also contact Rochelle at the Baby Loss Mentor. She provides a one-to-one mentoring program to discover who you are post-loss and begin to equip you with the right tools to manage your grief and your overwhelm. She can also offer comprehensive support programs for businesses of all sizes to be able to safely support staff members or clients who are impacted by pregnancy and infant loss.
Hi, and welcome to the farm. Today we're talking You've Married a Farmer, Now What? And today's guest is Chloe Brown. Chloe, introduce yourself, your family, and your farm.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm Chloe Brown and I'm a dairy farmer from southwest Victoria in a little town called Kirkstall. And in my family, we've got my husband and my two daughters, Eleanor and Charlotte, who are 9 and 5. And yeah, we run a 200 cow dairy farm. And at the minute we are desperate for rain.
Yes, I have seen photos of your way and we are sending thoughts and prayers to you.
Yes. And hopefully by the time this is released and, you know, I can give you an update and say we are beautiful and I've got so much grass and I don't know what to do with it is the hope.
We'd love to hear that update. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the one we all would like.
Chloe, how did you come to being married to your husband and on the dairy where you are now?
Yeah. So I was a typical teenager that had no idea what I actually really wanted to do in life, but was at a rural school. So I've really only moved 15 minutes away from where I grew up, but had an inkling that I kind of always wanted to be rural-ish, and was smart as a kid. So at our school, which was they didn't push farming in any way, shape or form. So I was never going to be a farmer, but I had smarts. And so the teachers kind of identified the smart kids and we were pushed into science. So I was at uni doing biomedical science when I just happened to have a Facebook message from a cute boy that used to play football. I played netball and he played football at the same club, and just happened to send me a message just in general life, invited me home. The footy was on in the local town. He said, "Oh, I'm still playing footy. Are you coming home by any chance for the weekend?" And I said, "Yeah." It was coincidentally, it was my dad's birthday. So come home and thought, oh, well, I'll go out for tea with him. And it sort of turned out to be one night turned into 3 days and we'd had all of the conversations, all of this is what life is, this is what I want to be. And on the Monday morning as I'm heading off to uni, he asks, when am I moving in? So my response was, well, not this week, but let's see what happens. And in the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, it became really clear that this was going to be a thing that we wanted to do. And so he was a dairy farmer and had always been a dairy farmer and had no intentions of doing anything else. So I sort of come home from uni after I finished that first year of uni and thought, well, what am I going to do? We just finished one of the units at uni in that first year was careers. And so biomedical science is really kind of the undergraduate to medicine. I was hoping to kind of get into research science was kind of my plan. Limited availability for a career in Southwest Victoria. Knowing there was not a lot of things that I might have done, I was like, well, maybe I transfer and do something else. Wasn't really keen to go to Melbourne anyway. It was kind of just I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but science feels easy. I'm good at it. Let's do it. So yeah, I kind of come home and we were so that was in the May. I was engaged by the October, and life was ready to go. But I was determined that I was never going to be the farmer. I was still going to go to uni and do all the things, and I was not going to be a farmer.
How did that go, Chloe?
Now I'm a farmer. So four uni courses later, have not found anything that I loved. Like, I was good at all of them, didn't find anything I loved, but found that the farm that I'd pushed back for so long, the story around me as a kid was that farming was lesser, and if you were a dumb boy that couldn't hack it as a smart kid, you'd go farming. And I well and truly believed that, I was too smart to be a farmer. So I kind of was always looking for something else. And when I actually kind of thought about it and was like, oh, why have I pushed back so friggin' long about this? This is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to be doing. Yeah, and I could not, now imagine anything else in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with that. So tell me about how the first introduction to the farm was when you first moved in and you first moved there. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I kind of, I'm going to answer this one in 3 parts, I reckon, because there's probably 3 clear, definitive answers, because I've kind of come in, left, and so we'll break this down into first stages. So my initial reaction was like, this is kind of, it was fun and it was cool, and we were early days dating. We'd go and check heifers, and we just kind of, I could play around on the farm. There was kind of there was no work for me to actually be or do. So that was kind of fun. I do remember one of the first times going into the dairy, like I would, so Rodney would milk with his mum, and so we've got a 22-a-side swing over dairy, a herringbone. So essentially cows come up either side, you're walking in the middle, cup swing across. So I'd come and just stand in the pit and I'd just watch, and Rodney's like, do you want to put cups on? I'm like, oh, nah, not today. I think I'm just going to watch, and we just chat and we just kind of hang out and I'd just be. And then it was probably 3 or 4 times after that, I was like, maybe I'll start spraying the cows. So they all get an iodine spray after they finish milking before they leave. I was like, maybe I could start with that. So I kind of started with that, did that for, 2 or 3 times. And I was like, maybe I'll put cups on. Maybe I won't. Oh, I don't know. Am I like, because all these dumb boys could put cups on, I was like, what? I'm going to make a mistake, and I can't make a mistake, and I'm too smart to make a mistake. So it's kind of similar to that, kids trying vegetables for the first time. Like, Do I like this? Don't like this? What am I actually doing? So I kind of started off putting 1 set of cups on per run. So probably 10 cups for the entire milking. So 10 cows over 2.5 hours. I was like, I like just gently tried. And it was kind of, then I was like, oh, this is not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I can't stuff it up. Like, it's actually fun. But we kind of just, like, me, the farm was very much a lifestyle. Yes, it had to be done, but it was kind of fun because I was off doing other things. So I was still doing uni and I was still working part-time, and I was off farm doing my stuff because I was not going to be a farmer. So I kind of was like, it's fun to go to the farm and play around and feed calves and, drive a tractor, and you could sit in the ute and, it kind of just become fun stuff that I would do.
Having a little luxury in the bush has arrived. Built with a goal to reshape the textile industry, Outback Linen Co is a premium Australian fashion and lifestyle brand developed by rural Australian designer and financier Sarah Henny. Raised on the values of durable, quality, sustainable and luxury, Outback Linen Co.'s mission is to create a brand that celebrates the world's finest linen while leaving a positive, sustainable footprint behind. I think what Sarah is doing is absolutely amazing. I really enjoy my items from the luxury organic linen company, the oatmeal everyday organic linen dress, which I have worn out to many events. It is very easily dressed up and dressed down depending on the occasion. Some events include the iconic Mink and Me annual ladies lunch. I also really enjoy their linen shirts. They are fantastic no matter the season of life that you are in, especially if you are in the years of going in and out of pregnancy. They fit so beautifully before you're pregnant, during your pregnancy, and again afterwards. It is a beautiful fabric, it breathes, it's comfortable, and it comes in both plain and printed designs, perfect for what you would like to wear. The Outback Linen Co has some really exciting news. They will be bringing out a new range very soon. Keep an eye on their socials as well as on their website for something that you can add to your collection. Now let's jump back into today's episode.
So 10 cows over 2.5 hours. I was like, I like just gently tried. And it was kind of then I was like, oh, this is not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I can't stuff it up. Like, it's actually fun. But we kind of just, like, me, the farm was very much a lifestyle. Yes, it had to be done, but it was kind of fun because I was off doing other things. So I was still doing uni and I was still working part-time and I was off farm doing my stuff because I was not going to be a farmer. So I kind of was like, it's fun to go to the farm and play around and feed calves and, you know, drive a tractor and you could sit in the ute and, you know, it kind of just become fun stuff that I would do. And then it kind of wasn't until Rodney's parents started to move out of the business. So Rodney was share farming.
Yeah.
And it was 50-50. That I kind of was like, oh, well, I would kind of step in a little bit more. And it wasn't an expectation. It was just kind of a natural progression that's just how it happened. But also at that same time, I got pregnant. And so our first daughter was born with, I was kind of playing on the dairy, but never actually in the business. Didn't know any of the numbers, didn't really have any idea of what sort of it actually meant to be in the farm. And so Ashley was born in 2013. And unfortunately, she was a beautiful, gigantic, 42 and a half weeks pregnant. I reckon I was like, we were well and truly done being pregnant. But she unfortunately had a genetic condition, which meant that she couldn't have the gas exchange for her lungs to operate properly. So whilst she knew that whilst she was in me, she was safe and she was fine. But as soon as she was born, it would become very obvious that she was not fine. And so we rushed her to the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. We caught the train, which is 4.5 hours by train. She went in a helicopter and I went by train, which is like a terrible, do not recommend going via train like 6 hours after you've just given birth. And we spent the month down in the Royal Children's, slowly but surely trying to figure out what was actually wrong with her. She got a little bit better, then she'd get worse, then she'd get a little bit better, then she'd get worse. And by sort of day 25-ish, we'd sent a lung biopsy off to America, and they just could not get her. She was still attached to a ventilator and just could not she just could not breathe by herself. Most of the time she was unconscious. It was just she was there, but she was not there. And by, say, day 25, they come to us and said, oh, there's going to be two options. Option one, she's going to come home, but she's going to be super sick. You'll spend a lot of time at the Royal Children's. You're in for a slog. Option two, which we're probably leaning more towards this, is it's a condition that we haven't seen very much of. We rarely see it. The people in America have only seen it a couple of times. They hadn't seen it at the Royal Children's. But we think it's probably going to be this. And our recommendation is that you turn off her life support and say goodbye when you can. And she'd progressively been getting worse. So we give her the deficiency is surfactant. So it does the gas exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen. And so they give it because preemie babies don't have surfactant either. So it happens naturally once you kind of get to full term. So they gave it the first time, it worked for a week. Then the next time they gave it and it only worked for 5 days, and then they worked, give it and only worked for 3 days. So she kind of progressively began getting worse. And they said, we don't know when it will stop or, how long she will actually have. They couldn't tell me when to turn life support off, that was going to be the best option. So we actually made the decision to turn off her life support and say goodbye. And so that was one of the most beautiful and heart-wrenching and ridiculous days of our lives. But in hindsight, it was the best situation, because we actually got to say goodbye on our terms. We organised the photos. We'd had a family day the day before where everyone come and had cuddles, and, Rodney hadn't held her. So I had her for 10 minutes maybe on my chest when she was born, and then we hadn't held her for 30 days. So there was a whole heap of that, she's a baby and she's ours, but that was so disconnected to what she actually was. So we got to spend 24 hours really together, knowing that she was not going to come home, to actually say goodbye, do it on our terms. And actually it was really peaceful, and she was surrounded by love, and it was just exactly what we all wanted. And it horrendous to then, have to make that call, but it was the only call that we could make. And I would have wanted nothing worse than have, a phone call in the middle of the night to say, oh, she's gone, and we weren't there or something. So yes, we then caught the train home. So that was a nice little ribbon on that bow. How do you get home then from Melbourne? Well, guess what? Caught the train. Still also don't recommend going on the train. But yeah, we come home, and then sort of that next introduction to farming was survival. And so Rodney had to get up and milk. And we were very lucky that Rodney's family had stepped in, and his brother, who was also a dairy farmer, come and helped, because we were calving at the time. And Rodney and I concentrated on surviving in Melbourne, and the farm just kind of ticked along, but there was so much that didn't get done in that month. So yeah, we kind of come home, and Rodney his only coping mechanism was to farm. And his family was very much they're brilliant humans, but they don't do emotions, and they're old school, and they don't know how to communicate about emotions, or, even know what to do in that situation. So how, they just do, we're just going to get in and we just do stuff.
Very common for that generation.
Absolutely. And I, don't begrudge them, but it was kind of we're just moving on. This is what it is. But in hindsight, it was the best thing, because we knew every day we had to get up and we had to milk cows, and jobs had to be done. And I didn't know how to actually function in life, in society, because people knew that we'd had a baby. They knew that we were, in Melbourne, but didn't really know any of the details. And so we then come home and had her funeral, and the awkwardness from people down the street that didn't know what to say or how to act or how to be was kind of, that was the worst part, really. But I was safe on the farm. And so I slowly but surely, Rodney and I together, which is really the kind of the core part to that, was we could actually just be together, farm together. It was silly things like just go on and sit in a tractor, or just I really wasn't working. We were just living together. So that was kind of why I then figured, in that next 6 months, I was like, right, this is where I'm meant to actually be. Fast forward, we then 6 months later decided, well, we figured out it was a genetic condition. So Rodney and I both carry the same gene. So it's like a 1 in a million chance of it happening without the gene. But we both carry this gene that we never realised. You don't test for it normally. So you can now test for, if you know what the gene you're looking for, you can test when you're pregnant. So sort of 6 months later, we decided, well, we'll have another try and see if we can have another baby. And unfortunately, you get tested at 12 weeks and it's taking the cells of the baby, not just amniotic fluid. So that was horrendous in itself. So we had that test and it was 16 and a half, so you have to wait 6 weeks. So we were 16 and a half weeks before we got the results to come back. And it was 18 and a half weeks before we could go and have a second baby that was non-viable with life. And we made the call to have an early termination, because there's no right time to have a non-viable with life. You're either saying goodbye at 18 weeks or you're saying goodbye at 40. So the best case for us medically and physically was to have a termination at 18 and a half weeks. And it was probably coming home after that, because I told no one I was pregnant. And like, I was all of the shame and all of the guilt and all of the, I didn't know how to be or how to act or how to even communicate that was what was going on. So yeah, we had that termination. Then I come home and I'd kind of been working at a bit of a milk bar in town, just, you know, casually because I could, something else for me to kind of just do. There wasn't actually space for me in the farming business. But after that, I just didn't know how to be a person in society. Yeah. So I knew that my safe space was always going to be the farm. And so, yeah, we kind of come home and once again just farmed together, which was lovely. And then, you know, it's kind of all of the life moves very quickly on a dairy farm. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, right, well, we're now not, you know, we had the termination in the January and we started calving in the March. So there really wasn't time to kind of think about it. It was just, right, we're now calving and we're now doing all the things. And so we kind of just, yeah, I jumped probably feet first into farming and doing the hands-on day-to-day stuff, which was great. But at that point in time, we had none of the business control. And so it was 50-50 on the farm, which meant Rodney and I were doing all the labour at that point, but Rodney's parents owned all the land and we owned half the cows, they owned half the cows, and all of the expenses for the running of the business was split 50-50. So if a vet bill come in or a hay bill come in or we needed new tracks for the laneway, everything would get split 50-50, which kind of worked quite well for the first, few years. And then we decided, Rodney kind of pestered me and was like, I think we really need to give this baby thing another go. And by that stage, I was kind of done. Like I was like, I really don't think I want to. And because every time we get pregnant, there's a 1 in 4 chance that a baby will be non-viable with life. And I was like, that's, it's kind of, they're big risks to take. And it's my mental health and my physical health that I am playing with. And so we kind of worked on that together. He kind of pestered a little bit. He'd always dreamed of being a dad. Yeah. And that was kind of important to him. So we fell pregnant again. And I jokingly say we're very, very privileged because I know not everyone is in this situation, but he could sneeze in the wrong direction and I'm pregnant. So, we take all of that other layer off to even, if we decide we're going to have a baby, we kind of just that's just what's happening. And so, yeah, we then fell pregnant and Charlotte came along and she was beautiful and healthy and she's a carrier. So she's got the same gene, but she is a carrier for that gene, which means essentially if and when she decides to have children, her partner would have to get tested. And then there's also a 1 in 4 chance if he's a carrier that they would be in the same situation to us. If he is not a carrier, it's all well and good. That's just life and they can move on. And so Charlotte sort of come into the world and changed our lives completely. But I was really determined. My mental health was not fabulous, really only because I didn't know how to be. I'd been a mum for 2 years. Charlotte was due 2 years to the day that Ashley was born. So there was a whole layer of, I don't want them to be born on the same day and all the things. So yeah, kind of I knew that I needed for my mental health to be farming. And so Charlotte just kind of was chucked into, this is farming and this is what we do. And I reckon I had probably 5 or 6 weeks off max. And then she would just come in the capsule and sit in the pram and she would sit at the end of the pit and I'd milk and then go and kind of Rodney would do some day-to-day stuff and I'd go home for a bit and then I'd go back to the dairy. And it was a really lovely time having a newborn on the farm because she just slept and ate and slept and ate and slept and ate, and we kind of just farmed, which was really lovely. But, that third introduction to farming is about to happen because in the dairy industry we had 2016 milk crash, where in dairy, essentially the processors would pay you forward for for what they assumed they were going to pay at the end of the month. And so you get, however much it's going to be. And then at the end of the year, they can either choose to step up your price and you get a bit of extra money, which is what had happened in previous years. No one realised that they could then step that back. And so the price then dropped considerably for the last 2 months of the year. And Rodney and I were very, very quickly noticing that we were just not going to be able to survive. Our debt level and our expenses were not going to work for the current situation we were in with the share farm. And we had a house block with land that the farm was using, but we were all paying off. We had an out paddock that the farm was using, but we were paying all of that debt off. Rodney's parents didn't have any debt at that point in time. And we'd come off 2 crappy seasons where we needed hay and we needed heaps of, inputs. And unfortunately, we didn't have any backing to know what we were doing. So we probably in hindsight, we made a way too quick of a decision and got out. So we sold most of our cows, sold the out paddock, which I'm still all these years later paying debt off because what we sold it for was not what the loan was, but got us out of a spot. And we kind of stepped back from dairy. And unfortunately, fortunately enough for us, Rodney's parents didn't think they could afford to retire at that point in time. And so they kind of had hoped to convert to beef and just run the land and just kind of tick along. And then Rodney's dad got quite sick. And Rodney and I were both doing our diploma of agriculture at the time, trying to actually be better dairy farmers, try and figure out how we could make it the best it could be. And it was through that sort of 6-12 months prior to the milk crash that I'd got all of my business skills about what farming businesses actually could be and do and achieve, and what a budget actually looked like, and how I could see good investments, and I could kind of already identify where the farm wasn't going wrong but wasn't actually doing as well as it could. But because I wasn't actually in the business, I couldn't actually I had no view of Rodney's parents' finances, and I knew what Rodney's bills were, but couldn't actually influence any of the decision making prior to those bills coming in. And so Rodney's dad was still really making most of the management decisions. Rodney was making some management decisions, but not all of them. And it was kind of that balancing act of, someone has to miss out. And Rodney's dad has done it his way for such a long time that Rodney just kind of went along with however his dad thought it was going to be. And so we spent, we got out in the July and we were back in by the November. So really no time at all. Yeah. But Rodney went and milked on another farm, and I went back and worked at the milk bar, and we kind of got some cash together and paid enough bills. We're able to pay the mortgage. That was kind of the main thing. We didn't want the house to go, but the burning in our belly was, we want to be farmers and we want to be in dairy and we want to do this. Rodney knew nothing else, and he didn't want to go back and learn something else. He has that real deep passion for dairy, and it had, in that time it had come to, I had formed a love and a passion for dairy that I didn't realise was ever going to be there, and we didn't want to just throw it away. So we had investigated some other options, go and share farm or lease at other farms. And Rodney had kind of been helping a little bit with his parents, just feeding out and doing all the sort of the laboury stuff. And then it was sort of really when Rodney's dad got sick that I said, well, we want to give this a crack, but we want to do it our way. And I wanted to step in completely and take the business as the business and less of a lifestyle sort of just, it was, their business sense was very reactionary. Well, I need grass, I'll go and buy hay today. Don't actually worry about what the price is. We'll just buy whatever's cheapest. And Rodney and I could see, well, that doesn't actually get you anywhere long term. Like that's great in a short term, and if you've got no debt, that's okay. But for a long term sustainable business that makes profit year in, year out, and when things get tough, that doesn't work. So I created a business plan, got an external consultant in, and we kind of all sat at the table, and I said, well, this is what we want to do. Can we make it work? But the proviso is we're not coming in at a share. We want to lease the farm. We will buy all the cows. We want to do it our way and have complete control. And so that, that third sort of entry into farming was then us making the management decisions, us actually knowing where the money was going and what investments we were doing, what outcomes we actually wanted. And Rodney and I had a really, really clear vision of what we actually wanted to achieve and how we wanted our life to be. And it was quite different to what his parents had wanted their life to be. So, yeah, we kind of come in, that's now November 2016-ish. Charlotte was only little, and we kind of heads down, bum up, got into farming, and have really ticked some big goals off in that short period of time. But it was a very big learning curve to be like, all right, you can love this thing, but if it's not actually making you money or being profitable, then you can't be in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a big thing to sit down and say to Rodney's parents. We want to run the business.
Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit more about that, because that not only takes bravery, but that whole intergenerational conversation, you really start hitting up things against, well, Rodney's their boy, and now he's wanting to take more of a business stance rather than being 50-50. It's sort of, okay, now we're going above and a little beyond that in some people's minds. So
yeah,
I would love to hear more about that, because I know from a lot of the other people and farmers that I have spoken about on this channel, that is massive, Chloe, and well done.
Well, I don't think we have any so dairy is a really, succession is so hard in dairy. It really, really is. And I suppose unlike a lot of cropping or beef farms, sheep to some extent, the dairy cash flow always wins. And so if you don't have asset but have cash flow, you can kind of make it work. So this is why you can have really good managers, you can have really good share farmers, you can have really good leasees that have really great cash flow and really great businesses but own no asset. But when you're talking about owning assets, like in dairy, they become very, very expensive very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so we never come in with the intention we never assumed that we were owed anything. We never assumed that we deserved to take anything over. So we come with a really big business plan around the fact that we would take operational control of the farm. We want no asset in that. So we agreed for the first 5 years that we would lease purchase the cows, because obviously we had no cash flow at that point in time. How do you just go and buy cows? And we would lease the farm for the first 5 years to then, get our feet, see how it goes. They would still have security. They would have a regular income coming in. That would be fine. And their real concern was around just being able to actually pay that back. Can we afford to lease the farm? Can we afford to pay our bills and not have, too many issues in that first sort of 5 years? Of which I knew I had done. I knew the kind of budget numbers from the previous years and added plenty of, wiggle room in there. So I knew the numbers were going to stack up, and I knew the things that we wanted to do instantly that would make us more money pretty quickly. Grazing differently, making sure that the cows were fully fed at all times. we had green grass in the paddock, but not enough green grass to start a rotation. So one of the, it was a funny little balancing act there of Rodney's dad would go, why are the cows not on green grass? When you've got grass in the paddock, you're still feeding them silage. Why are you wasting that silage? And I was like, but there's feed wedge, and if we don't manage this now, you're not going to have spring to get a silage cut for next year. Like there's a process there that we could see that he hadn't ever sort of been exposed to. And so the conversation was just making sure that we could do the job, and then we had to kind of just do it to prove that we could. I don't think that the conversation would have been as easy had he been well. And if it was like, it's not easy having retired in inverted commas from milking and having not put cups on for 5 or 6 years to then come back in morning and night every day milking 150 cows. Like it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of physical strain on your body. And I think they both got to the point where they were tired and they were sore, and they could see that this is not going to be a long-term thing, but they didn't want to sell the farm. They have no intention to ever sell the farm. They both have made it very clear that they would like to die on the farm. This is where they're going to be. And so they either had two options. They give it to us and we would make sure that happened, or you put someone else on there, which then potentially does not follow with what they actually want. And unfortunately for a lot of farms, the succession, if there is not someone coming through, or if there is not a clear option, a lot of dairy farms go to beef. And once they kind of go to beef, they never really come back to dairy. And it's not as if it couldn't be dairy. It's just that the inputs change and the management style changes, and the way that you look at it from a business point of view changes. And if a dairy is not operational for a while, it seizes up a bit and it gets a bit dirty and it gets a bit hard to restart. So we were very determined that we didn't want the farm to just fade off into the abyss. And Roddy and I are really passionate about making sure that our farm continues for generation and generations of just dairy farming. So it doesn't matter whether that's our kids or someone else's kids. I really want it to be a dairy. It's a productive dairy country. We need it to remain in dairy. So yeah, the conversation was certainly not easy, but it helped with an external consultant. It helped that they were kind of pushed into a corner a little bit, and that I was probably, I'm quite blunt and I'm quite forward and I don't like taking no for an answer. So I kind of was like, well, this is what we want to do. This is all the numbers. I know it's going to work. Let's just give it a go. But it comes with they took the risk that we actually knew what we were doing and that we would be able to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 big questions from that, Chloe, is first, who was the external person that you used, and what did the first 2 years look like? Because the first 2 years of the 5, I can imagine, would have had the biggest relationship impacts on with you and Rodney and the family, but as also with him and his family. So let's talk about that as well.
Yeah, so there's a heap of consultants within dairy, and so we had a consultant through RIST, which is who we were studying our diploma of ag through, and so they kind of just come and sat down at the table and had a chat. And in dairy you can do dairy based numbers, which is essentially you put all of your inputs, all of your profit and losses, all of how many hectares of silage did you cut, what cows are running on what ground, you put every number in, and it will actually give you a really detailed report about where your numbers sit and where you stack up against the best 25 in the state, and then sort of the best 25 around your area, which is a brilliant tool that we can use to figure out what my cost of production is and figure out what levers I can pull and why are my expenses so high, what am I doing that doesn't stack up from a business performance point of view. So that was really handy. I kind of had all those numbers to the consultant just then kind of talked it through. But yeah, if you're looking for a dairy consultant, there is so many, and a great place to start is through the Dairy Australia website, and most of them are specific dairy consultants. So yeah, they're fabulous. The first 2 years, funnily enough, we kind of fluked some really good seasons. So we were understocked when we come in, and didn't have enough cows for the land that we had, and almost instantly changed the way that we cut grass for silage and conserved fodder. So that first 12 months, I think in a normal year, Rodney's parents had tried to always get like 400, 500 bales of silage, which is kind of, 2 per animal. We had kind of hoped that we were going to get 600, 700 just as a bit of a buffer, have some storage up our sleeves. And in that first, sort of 5 or 6 months, sort of we come in the November and kind of tackled silage just as it sort of happened. But then that following year, because we only cut excess rather than shutting up silage, we got 1,200 bales. So we were well and truly set up from a fodder point of view, and we're lucky that the seasons had played well. But we'd also put the hard work in to not graze too early, to not overgraze, to make sure the rotation was right. We are very big on making sure that your paddocks, like grass is always king, but it doesn't actually work if you're not working at it consistently. And so making sure it's grazing at the right length, and you're allowing it to actually be grazed when it needs to be grazed, rather than just, it's a night paddock, so the cows will only ever go in there at the night. But if it's not ready, they'd go somewhere else, which Rodney's parents had kind of been very, these are the night paddocks, these are the day paddocks. So we kind of changed it to a complete rotation up and down. So it kind of, all of those things changed pretty quickly, and it was kind of very obvious in the first 12 months to 2 years that we were making some pretty simple management changes, but had really big inputs. And that then kind of allowed the business kind of just tick along really nicely, and we had a bit more discretionary spending, I suppose, to put some infrastructure in, and we could do some upgrades that we actually wanted that were important for us. And in that sort of first 12 months, we brought on different consultants. So through Fonterra, who we supply our milk to, they have a service offering called Farm Source, which is a paddock specialist, a finance specialist, a milk quality specialist, sort of your general field officer. And so they all come and sat at the table, and we made a really big plan on what do we actually want to achieve in the next 5 years? Where do we see our values and what's important to us, as in what is important to Rodney and I, and what do we see is important to the farm? And work out the numbers, where our easy, low-hanging fruit that we can kind of tick off nicely. And so we were kind of just ticking along as our plan. Rodney, because his parents are very much doers and not talkers, they really didn't communicate well in that first 12, 18 months, 7 years,
Yep.
now that we're up to. So they kind of like to see action. And you really, in that first little bit, Rodney's dad would always make comments about why we were doing stuff, but it was more of a comment like, oh, well, I wouldn't do it like that. And Rodney would just go, that's okay, we're doing it how we want to do it. And he almost stopped listening. So it was kind of just a let it go. I'm a big listener and take it all on board and assume that, I want sort of external validation from them. Rodney's like, nah, I'm just doing it. Like, I know this works. You've told me it works. The numbers work. We're going to try it. And Rodney's probably, his faith in me in terms of a business, but also as a farmer, really grew in that first sort of 12 to 18 months on the farm, because some of the decisions that I made really paid off. And he was always hesitant, but would then ring the consultants at Farm Source and was like, so we've got this idea, should we? And they'd go, yes. Or they'd say, no, but I think this is a better option, that we then come to a better outcome. And, we're ticking goals that way. So he's kind of, we got some really early wins on the board, which just kind of then all gave us the confidence that we were actually doing it. And Rodney's parents could see that we were actually just doing it. And so from their point of view, like it kind of made that transition a bit easier because we actually could prove that we were doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that you pointed out that sometimes there is a communication barrier and sometimes you don't get that external validation. But I loved that you and Rodney just still did it because you knew your numbers and you knew that you could do it. And I really loved that, because that in itself is so hard to do a lot of the time when you come from a background off farm and you are getting external value, external I can't speak. When you are getting that external validation and you do have goalposts that don't move and the KPIs. So I love that you set that for yourself from a business point of view, and that you just went, we're going to be able to go forward and kick goals and do what we need to do, and without the external validation. So I loved that. Yeah,
and I think there was a real big turning point when I stopped listening to the external noise. And a lot of people, like, you know, I'm assuming if you've ever heard a dairy farmer speak, they're up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they're doing ridiculous things before the sun's up, and they work so many hours and it's all strict. Rodney and I don't do any of that. We are very, very much about what actually works for us. And so we don't get up and milk cows until my alarm goes off at 7:30 in the morning. So I get up, get the kids sorted, then we go and milk cows. So because if we're going to do this forever and we're going to do this well, we want us to be the main priority. So we actually prioritized ourselves and our family. And so our big KPIs really were around how it's making us feel and how it's making us, you know, how we see value in ourselves and what it's making us feel like. And when I stopped listening to the external noise of, drove past at lunchtime and you were still in the dairy, okay, sure, nice observation. That doesn't change how I farm. That's not going to change how I do what I do. That's because that's how we want it to be. And the amount of external noise that come negatively around, oh, well, you've changed this and you've done that, and you haven't sprayed your weeds and you haven't done your, whatever. Everyone would like to, put a comment in. And when I was kind of always hoping for external validation and never getting it, because everyone's dairy is very big on anyone that's doing well, we're going to cut you down straight away. Mm-hmm. So I kind of, once I'd stopped listening to all of that noise, the way Rodney and I felt and the discussions we were having, we knew we were on the right track. So it didn't actually matter what anyone else thought, and it didn't actually matter what anyone else wanted the farm to look like or to be like, or, just because it's different doesn't make it wrong. It's just different. So yeah, we kind of really in that, we were very set in stone on how we wanted us to look and to feel. And everyone else could just drive past and make their own comments, but I'm not going to listen to it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, because it is what works for you and Rodney, because you are the driving force and your family is everything. So I really love that you're able to take that approach. So even though you've got different milking times, I'm assuming the intervals and everything else are the same?
Yep, absolutely. So we still milk twice a day. They're still, it's just that we're milking at 7 o'clock till 9:30. Sometimes it's 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the morning. We go and do all our jobs and then we'll milk in the afternoon, but we're not going at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going at, 5:30, 6 p.m. at night and not getting in until sort of 9:30. But that's because it suits us with school-age kids, and we were doing it before Charlotte got to school, but we kind of, in my head, I was like, well, I don't want to drag my kids, because we don't live on farm. So we live around the corner, which means I still have to drive my car to get to the dairy. So I don't want to be dragging my kids, because, Eleanor then come along. She's 5 now. So we've chucked her into the mix as well. But I didn't want them to be dragged at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Nothing good happens at that time of the morning. So I would rather spend time, get up when we can all get up, then go and milk. Then they can go to school and do their things. I can then pick them up from school in the afternoon. I can then have some time with them. Rodney can have some time with them. We get them sorted for tea. Then we go and milk. And I'm very, very privileged in the fact that Rodney's parents still live at the dairy. So if I needed them and when I needed them, the kids would go over, they'd have a bath, they'd have tea, and they'd be ready for me to pick them up and drive them, and then they'd go home to bed. So like it worked for us that we could have that quality time in the mornings and in the afternoons, because I don't prescribe to the kids you have to change your entire life to fit around the kids. But we wanted our life to be about being a family and spending quality time together as a family, which meant the kids could then come home from school. We'd all go and get the cows in. We'd spend time in the dairy. Once it got late and cold, they could then go and, they're ready for bed. And like we had that support network that allowed that. But nothing else changes. They're still getting fed twice a day. They're still getting milked twice a day. It's just the lights are on in the evening and not in the morning.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So anyone else who's listening along, if the farm is not working, whether you're in dairy or in another industry, if the farm is not working for you and your husband and your family, there are other ways to do it that can make that work. So I absolutely love that. For
and
me,
I think there's nothing worse than fighting it. Like if you're constantly fighting a battle, regardless of what it is, like just let it go and figure out the way around it.
Yeah. And as your kids age and as, you learn through the parenting journey, you can see when they start to get tired and you can see what works for your routine. And yes, that will change, but that's also like one of those things where the more organized you are with your farm and the more planned you are, actually the more flexible you can be because you know what's on, you know what's got to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I live by my calendar now, and I'm probably I probably spend more time scheduling other stuff in and the farm comes second, but it allows me to actually know, well, these are the big days where I'm at home and I got, we can organize the vets on a Wednesday when we're both home and we know that that's our big farming day. We've got no kids, Charlotte's at school, Eleanor's at kinder. I've got all of these hours to actually get jobs done on farm. So we schedule it for that day because, I don't want to be, 65 going, oh, well, I never got to do anything because the farm always had to be priority number one. Like, I don't want my kids to leave home and go, well, mum and dad never spent any time with us. So I want to make sure that priority number one for us is our family and how we actually structure our life then fits, yes, there's some things that can't change. So milking in the morning and in the afternoon, but we could also change that if we wanted to. We don't want to employ staff to milk yet because we like doing it. So, just because you're doing it your way, and I suppose for anyone listening, just because it's been done that way doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. And if you're gonna, like, everything is hard. And once you kind of figure out that everything is hard, it doesn't matter whether it's rosy, you've got heaps of water, you've got no water, you've got cows that are, doing whatever. There's always going to be hard things, but you get to choose the hard. And so it's either going to be hard now or harder later or hard for something else. So if you're okay with that, and we're okay with it being harder in the evenings, and like my kids still don't like sleeping without us because like they're so used to us coming home at 9:00, 9:30, having tea, then going to bed by 10:30. Like, so they would kind of wait up and stay awake until 10:00 so that they could come to bed with us. Like, that's a battle I'm battling now. But when they were babies, that worked really well because I had 9 years of Charlotte where I didn't have to do a bedtime routine and she didn't have to be scheduled in bed by 7:00. It was just, it is what it is. So yeah, I don't know. I really, it works for us and it works for our family, but I live by my calendar to make sure actually jobs get done on the farm.
It's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist or it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I'll just completely miss that. Oh, well, we meant to drench carbs. Oh, we need to freeze brand. Well, if it's not in the calendar, it's not getting done because I'll be doing something else.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Chloe, for chatting with us today. Was there any other advice? I mean, I know we've covered so much in today's episode. Was there anything else specifically that you would like to give advice on for those who are moving to the farm for the first time, especially if it's, say, a dairy.
And I think, so for me, nothing grinds my gears more than farm wives coming in and trying to change their husbands. And I suppose this is in the nicest way possible. If you choose this life, you need to choose it with your whole heart. And if this is what you're actually doing, then put your whole energy and life into that. And I get it. It's hard, to kind of come to grips with that if you are trying to be something else. And I was trying to be something else. But once I actually kind of gave into, well, this is what my life is. This is where I actually want to be and what I actually want to do. Everything else become easy. So if you are doing farming, and whether that's bookwork, housework, actual physically farming, it doesn't matter, but be in it and don't do it begrudgingly. Don't, feel like everything is a slog. If it's a slog, then you're probably doing it wrong. And think about what you can actually do to make it easier and make life better. Life's about living, not just being. So I think, I would encourage anyone to, if they are moving to a farm, whether it's dairy or otherwise, to actually figure out what you want life to feel like and be like. And we're very lucky in dairy, especially Dairy Australia offer our Farm Our Plan, which is a mini course essentially to kind of sit down and actually write down what your values are, write down what you actually want in life, figure out what you're going to do for the next 5 years, and kind of all get on the same page. And that for us was really important about, it wasn't just what we wanted the farm to look like, but what we wanted our family to look like, what we wanted to actually be and feel and do, and the impacts we wanted to have both on our farm but also in our community, which is important for me. I think knowing where you're going and what you're doing and what actually is important to you will make everything else much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And those values need to be reflected in the business plan as well, because there's no point having a business plan which is going in one direction when you and the family want to go in another. So I love that. I really think that values is something that we don't spend enough time on in the agriculture industry.
And because we're working in the businesses, you kind of forget all of that. And when you're dealing then with, if I was talking to Rodney's parents about what they valued, like they would not have the language around it. They wouldn't have the skills to actually know how to set a value or what's important, but they kind of in their heart know what's important. Yeah. Or we've just done it this way forever, so it's just how it has to be done. But if you kind of take a bit of time, actually spend the time on the business and actually figuring out what you want in life, then everything else becomes much easier. Yes, it might be a full day of actually thinking about it, and it's not easy and it's not comfortable, because most of the time you kind of have to deal with, all of the trauma of, well, like we always lamb it this year, or we always, we've always just planted wheat. Why would I want to go and do something else? If it doesn't align with your values, well, what are you doing it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for coming on today, Chloe, and best wishes with everything going forward.
Before you leave this episode today, I'd like to introduce to you Chloe's podcast.
Welcome to More Than Milk, the podcast sharing the incredible stories of the dairy industry. The challenges, the success, the passion, and the reasons why my guests are involved in all things dairy. I'm your host, Chloe Brown, and although we're all doing things slightly different on farm, it's the people, their individual experiences, how they got to where they are, and what's getting them out of bed every day that we're here to explore and celebrate. I hope you'll be inspired by their stories, pick up some insights along the way, and recognise it's more than milk.